Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for coming for today's session for resume tips and traps with Umair Ayyub. Umair has helped hundreds of immigrants for in resume. He actually is very active. Those people who are involved in Pakistan professional forums or SPP groups, he helps everyone, find their ideal jobs. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on his introduction. I'll let him introduce himself as well, and then proceed with the session. And thank you, Umair, for joining and doing this session for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafael. And it's actually a pleasure. And I'm actually quite excited about this session because I love getting the opportunity to guide the immigrants about what they should listen to or what they should not listen to. And that's very important to know what you should not listen to because that can actually waste a lot of time. So I'll just give a quick background about myself because this session is all about the new immigrants. I'm just going to give my quick background. Then we'll go through a Kahoot quiz because I have put in some very commonly asked questions there. And then after we're done with that, then we can go on to talk about the common myths and tips and traps. And then we'll open it up for the questions. So quickly about myself, I'm a supply chain professional. I've worked all my career in supply chain. In Pakistan, I worked with Nestle, Abu Dhabi, and Mondelez. I came to Canada 4 years back, and what I did for myself before coming and after coming here, which Alhamdulillah helped me find, actually get 7 calls before landing here, and then landing here, I switched 4 different companies in the first 5 months. I declined the fifth offer, Alhamdulillah. The fourth company I joined was Amazon. Then I was with Amazon for about 2 years in 3 different roles. And then one of my first employers, they offered me a director of supply chain role. So Alhamdulillah, Allah made me a director of supply chain. I'm currently working with them for about 2 years now. Other than that, I've been actively helping people since the beginning of 2020. And in the just last 12 months, I've worked with over 450 professionals from different job fields, different nationalities, different career levels. I've practically worked with every job field except medical doctors. The only reason I've not worked with doctors so far is no doctor has reached out to me. I don't think they need resumes. So that's probably the only reason I haven't had a chance to work with them. But other than that, I've worked with fields that I didn't even know existed. Like probably 6 months before, I did not even know there's something called product management. But now I know the difference between product management, business analysts, and all of those program management, technical program managers. Because I work with so many people on their resumes, I know what business requirement documentation is. How do you elicit business requirements? What is Figma? What is Trello? What is Jira? I know their names. I don't know their interfaces at all. I know that you require those skills, and you have to develop the product strategy. What is PDLC? What is Agile, Scrum, Sprint meetings? I know all the names, but I haven't done anything in ever. I've never been a part of any sprint planning or a Scrum meeting. So just that was my background. So quickly, if we can go to our browsers, and if we can just go to kahoot.it, and then I'll give you the game code so we can all get in there.
So sorry if you could spell it.
Kahoot, kahoot.it.
Thanks.
I'm gonna place this in the chat as well.
Yes, that would be great.
And Umair, is the pin on the chat?
Yes, Rafael, if you can put the pin there as well, 7294893. 7294893. I can see people are joining. We have 3 so far.
Umair, can you repeat that?
Unfortunately, it is only allowing me 3 people. That's very, very bad.
7294893.
7294893.
Yes, so Umair is not allowing me. I tried joining.
That's really strange. Okay, so seems like I've used my quota of free quizzes. All right, so Rafael, is it okay if we do it in this session? Like just
That's
answer those
fine.
questions here?
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
Because I'll just bring up those questions here and we can just, discuss them here.
Is it me or Umair's video is frozen right now?
Is it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is
it's
frozen.
frozen. Frozen, yeah.
Oh, that's Rafael, can I rejoin?
Sure.
I hope it's working now. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Perfect,
Yes.
perfect. Okay. All right. So the quick questions that I had, I broke this down into a few sections. So the first question I had is, I think you guys can just, raise your, that emoji at the bottom where you can just click to raise your hand. I think you can just answer by that. So I'll start with the first question, that in order to start a new job or a new career in Canada, one must be willing to take one or two steps below what they were working on back home. Is that true or false? If you think it's true, just raise your hand. If it's false, don't just click it. All right, so we have 4 votes. That's good. It's good. So not everybody thinks that. That's actually a relief. All right, so second question is that your resume's ideal length is less than 2 pages or more than 2 pages. If you think it's less than 2 pages or less than 3 pages, let's say, then raise your hand. Wow. Okay, 11. Great. Okay. Third question is that in order to crack the ATS, your job scan match score should be more than 90%, or it doesn't matter. If you think it should be more than 90% or 80%, just raise your hand. If you think it doesn't matter, don't raise your hand. All right, so we have 7. Interesting. Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. The next question is that ATS can rule out your resume if you are not using the key skills and key tools or the keywords. It can rule out your resume. If you agree, press yes. If you don't, then just do not raise your hand. Great. We have 9. Awesome. Okay. Great. Okay. And another question. Do you think ATS can reject your resume on its own without a human ever seeing your resume? If you think yes, then you can just click yes or raise your hand. All right. So that's another 9 people. Rafael, what's the total number of participants that we have right now?
We have around
15. Is that I'm counting it right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 15.
15. Great. Okay, so 60% believe that. That's good. Okay. Another question is, ATS cannot read tables, logos, white color text. If you agree, raise your hand. All right, we have 6. Awesome. Great. Okay, and another question about the Canadian job market. The Canadian job market is going through an historical slowdown. If you agree, please raise your hand. 50% of the population, 60%, almost 70. Great. All right, and let's come to the last one. An internal referral through a system portal, like most big companies have, puts your resume on the top of the candidate list. If you agree, please raise your hand. All right, interesting. All right, that's all the questions I had for the quiz. And interestingly, most of the questions we had, at least 60% agree with those. Okay, so again, like I said, whatever I'm going to tell you is not my personal opinion, or it's not hearsay, it's not common notions or common myths. It's my firsthand experience based on over 450 professionals in the last 1 year. So it doesn't get any more relevant or any more fresh than that. So I'll start with the questions that we just discussed. The first question about the Canadian job market. The unemployment rate is around 5.6%, which is close to the historic low that Canada has seen in the last 30 years. So Canadian job market is actually not in a slowdown. Canadian job market is actually very hot right now. And each and every sector has a lot of jobs coming up every single day. And I'm sure you can see that on Indeed and LinkedIn as well. And this is what I tell everybody. If you hear somebody tell you, okay, this is what's going on in the market, just go online, do a Google research, and you will find that Statistics Canada shares those numbers every month. And Canadian job market is not in a slowdown at all. Yes, in December, there would be a snooze period because of vacations, which will start from mid-December to first week of Jan. But those are the only 3 weeks where there would be a slowdown, or you can say everybody would be on snooze because everybody will hit pause and go for vacations. Other than that, this whole year has been crazy. The job market has been super active. In this last week, I have had 16 candidates that had their interviews, and they were across software development, cybersecurity, insurance, risk management, finance, financial planning and analysis, supply chain, HR, marketing, digital marketing, you name it. And people are interviewing with banks. One of my candidates that I'm mentoring, he received an offer from a company, and he had an interview with Google as well. So again, the whole job market is super active right now. Second question I want to address first is, we discussed that you need to take a step down if you want to start your career in Canada. I think 40% people only agreed with that. And that's right, you do not need to take a step down. I've worked with people from starting level all the way to VP level, and whatever level they were at back home, they started at the same level or the similar level. If they were a senior manager, they started as a senior manager. If they were a brand manager, they started as a brand manager. So you do not need to take a step down. Then let's come to the length of the resume. I think most of you agreed that it should not be more than 3 pages. It's not about the length of the resume. It's more about the content and how easy it can be read. And I'll come to that more in detail later. Now, coming to the ATS thing, let's get that out of the way first, and then we can go to the common myths. So ATS does not rule out your applications. It can rule out your application based on a few things, like mandatory questions. For instance, are you legally authorized to work in Canada? If you hit no, yes, it will rule you out. Are you 18 years of age or older? You hit no, yes, it's going to rule you out. If you say, let's say, are you comfortable with the commute to this location? And you hit no, or you say, I'm not willing to commute or I'm not willing to relocate, yes, it can rule out your application. It does not rule out your applications based on the keywords. Please get this very clear. I've shared a lot of videos about this on the groups as well. It does not work that way. Your application is 95% of the time is rejected by a human, a recruiter. And a recruiter will probably open the first 30, 40, or 50 applications out of hundreds of applications they get. So it's very important to be an early applicant. And then having your resume to be, it should be easily scannable by a human. They can skim through it very smoothly. That's what you need to focus on. So we'll come to that one. Other question about what we discussed was, yes, the referrals. I think there were over 60% people that agreed that referrals actually put your application on the top of the candidate list. It's not true. If it's an internal referral through a portal, it does not work that way. A cold referral doesn't work that way. Yes, a hot referral where I know the hiring manager and I take your resume to the hiring manager and I tell him, can you please consider this? Or I email it to them directly to the recruiter or the hiring manager. That is a completely different ballgame. But if we're talking about system referrals, that's not how they work. System referrals just tag the applicant as being referred by you or whoever the employee is. And if that employee gets selected and completes their probation, then that employee will actually get a bonus. But that's it. That's all it does. Otherwise, the whole process is the same. If your resume is not well made, if it is not relevant, it will not get shortlisted regardless of the referral. And I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people. Then we talked about the job scan score as well. Now I'll start talking about the myths because this session is focused on resumes. So we'll not touch upon interviews. We'll just talk about resumes today. First and foremost, what we need to understand, we get a lot of free advice. Everybody around us is going to give us advice, even if they are from our sector or not. If I ask somebody, I want to land a job in cybersecurity, everybody will offer me advice. Even if they don't know the spelling of cyber, they will still give me advice. That's something wrong with this. But I have cracked who you should not listen to. And that's what I started with, that it's very important what we should not listen to. And that is, it's a very simple formula. Anybody who has not switched to at least one better job in the last 3 years max, using their own resume and interview skills, please do not listen to a word they say. Somebody who's not even switched, who's not been actively applying in the last 3 years, they've not even looked at their resume. What kind of advice would they give you? And those advices, I call them the 4 myths of the Canadian job market. Number 1, we just addressed the length of the resume. Again, I'll reiterate that. It's not about the length of the resume. Yes, it should not be stupidly long, like it should not be 5 pages, 6 pages. It should be in line with the number of years of experience you have. So if you have 15 years of experience and you have a 3 years resume, that's fine. The emphasis should be on the last 6 to 10 years. So if somebody who has 15 years of experience, the emphasis should be on the last 10 years. Somebody who has 8 years of experience, the emphasis should be on the last 5 years. Anything before that, it's too old. It doesn't really matter. Just write 2-liners about it, and that's all. You don't need to go in detail with that. And secondly, the most important thing that matters about the resume as length or format is it should be easily skimmable. I should be, as a recruiter, I can easily skim through it and still not miss out any important details. That's what matters. Second thing that we hear a lot in Canadian job market as new immigrants is that you need to customize your resume for every single job that you apply to. And you need to capture the keywords, I don't know, 2x times or something. There's some, black magic formulas going out there that I hear and I find them so funny. You do not need to do that. For instance, if you're applying to a product manager role, a product manager role has the same requirements. It's going to ask you for the same requirements. 90% of the requirements are going to be same. What are you going to get by changing the resume? And anyone who has used JobScan would know that, let's say if your resume says gathered business requirements and the job says gather business requirements in present tense, JobScan will say it's not a match. Now, are you going to change that? Are you going to change your past roles to a present tense? Absolutely not. You do not need to do that. And of 450 odd people I've worked with, we have never tweaked the resumes for every job. We make one resume. And that one resume is based on 10 different job descriptions that you're targeting. So once you go through 10 target jobs, you will find all the key skills, the key tools, the key responsibilities, the competencies, the expectations, and you capture them in your previous roles in your skills and tools section, and that's it. That's all you need to do. You do not need to, we have never worried about the job scan. We have never worried about the ATS. We just make one clean, easy to skim through resume. That's all you need. You do not need to tweak it for every job. Please do not listen to anybody who tells you that. Number three, the myth we hear a lot is, again, we just discussed that, referrals. Again, we already discussed that, that referrals do not work the way we think they do. Secondly, logically speaking, what is our expectation from a referral? To get us to the interview seat, right? That is the expectation from the resume as well. So instead of going around and asking for referrals and reaching out to people on LinkedIn, can you refer me? Isn't it easier to make a better resume that gets you a better response rate? We do not need to reach out to people and ask them. I feel it quite counterproductive and frustrating that you reach out to 15 people and 14 of them read your message and do not even respond. So it's easier to make a better resume. And alhamdulillah, all the people I've worked with, all the people I've mentored, none of them ever needed a referral. None of them. They all landed relevant interviews without a single referral. Now, if you have a referral that can, forward your resume directly to the recruiter or directly to the hiring manager, that's a hot referral. That's something else. Yes, you want to do that, go ahead, by all means. We should do whatever it takes to land a job, but we should not chase referrals only. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The last myth we hear a lot is the Canadian experience, that you cannot get a good job in Canada without the Canadian experience. So I'll address it in two ways. All the 450 odd professionals I've worked with in the last 12 months, none of them had Canadian experience. They were all immigrants, all of them. They did not have any Canadian experience. Also, if I just talk about the Pakistani professionals I've worked with, so far, alhamdulillah, 44 professionals have landed a job offer and 2 are currently in the interview process in Pakistan. 44 that landed a job offer, all these people are those who landed a job offer before landing in Canada. So they did not even have a SIN number. Yes, they had their PR, they had their COPR stamp and they were willing to travel, but they landed a job offer before they physically landed in Canada. So they did not even have a SIN number. How would they have Canadian experience? So this myth about Canadian experience, please forget about it. You do not need Canadian experience. If your resume is showing the relevant skills, tools, competencies with the roles in Canada, that's all you need. You do not need Canadian experience per se. So now, having gone through the myths, now I will just quickly go through the questions that Rafael has sent me from the forms.
Yeah, Umair, before you do that, and I just want to have a feedback from the audience as well. So far, you're finding this session useful? Can we do raise of hands? Okay. So, and I think one of like if you see some of the comments that Umair made, right? That I think the first one was don't listen to everyone. Like don't even listen to me, right? I cannot give you an advice on how to tailor your marketing resume because I'm not a marketing guy, right? And then I think one of the very good insights that I probably learned from Umair in this session was that you have to be an early applicant, because if a job just got posted and you apply within the first 24 hours, that's your best chance of actually landing a job. And but I did have, and obviously the Canadian experience one and the customization of the job resume. But I think one comment that I had, Umair, and maybe you can answer that before we get into the questions, is sometimes, when we were looking at the resumes of people that are coming from Pakistan, new immigrants, they just in their very first role, they start as project manager, and then within like 6 months they become director. So that I know you said that you will get the same role here, but I think we also need to set realistic expectation that once after graduating you cannot be a director within, and you can't expect a director position over here, right? That's my insight, but maybe you can, you are an expert, you can say
absolutely agree with that, Rafael. And somebody who became a director in 6 months or 2 years or less than 10 years time back home is probably because he's working for his father or his father-in-law. Otherwise,
Yeah.
there is no way you can become a director in such a short time. And again, like I said, your resume should show that evolution. Obviously, when you're writing your resume, another thing that we need to understand is that we need to, I was going to get to that in the questions, but since you asked, I'm just going to explain it here. Yes, your resume should show an evolution. So let's say if I started off as a specialist, and then I moved on to an assistant manager, then I became a manager, then I was at a managerial role for, let's say, good 4 years, 5 years, then I became a senior manager, and then after 4 years I became a director. Yes, that makes sense. But if I became a director 5 years later and then I took a step back to senior manager, you do not need to do that. That's not going to make sense to the recruiters. That why do you take a step back? Another thing that we need to understand is that our titles or our internal company titles might not make sense to Canadians. So, for instance, I'll give you my example. So, I was working as head of logistics for Mondelez in Pakistan before I came here. Now, Mondelez had its internal title, which is Log Ops Manager, which is Logistics Operations Manager. Now, that term is not used globally. The same title for Nestle was called Physical Logistics Manager. But that's an internal Nestle terminology. Only two companies globally, two CPGs use physical logistics terminology. That's Unilever and Nestle. So in my resume, I'll write it as either National Logistics Manager or Head of Logistics. Second, if I work for a company that does not have a North American presence, then I need to explain that company. And that applies to big companies like Telenor. Telenor is not present in North America, so recruiters are not going to know that. And I give a very basic example. So let's say you're coming from Lahore or Karachi, and somebody comes to you in Karachi and says, I've worked for Rogers Telecom. You'll probably think it's a mobile shop in Sadar because you do not know Rogers Telecom. So this is what I tell people, that you worked in Jazz Telecom and you just wrote Jazz Telecom and you're expecting the recruiter to search it up. He doesn't have time for that. But if you explain Jazz Telecom is a global telecom operator, part of Wimpelcom, and has 75 million subscribers and a revenue of X billion dollars. Now, 75 million subscribers, you're applying in a country that celebrated when it reached 40 million population. You are telling them how big a company it was that you were part of, how complex the market was where you worked. So you need to create that relevance. Similarly, if you work for Telenor, then you should write Telenor is a global telecommunication giant with presence across 160 countries. And they would understand. But if you just write their name or provide their hyperlink, recruiter does not have time to click on that hyperlink and go on the website and see, okay, you have worked here. Yes, another thing very important, if your resume is getting responses from recruitment agencies, but not the company recruiters, that is still a cause for concern. Because recruitment agencies are getting paid for every candidate they're going to place. So yes, they might go the extra mile, but you might not get placed through a recruitment agency. But if you're applying directly to the company website and you're not getting responses, it's still because your resume is not making sense to them, or you're not applying early. That is one of the biggest and the most fatal mistake that we make. So yes, your resume, to your point, should show an evolution, and we should have that realistic expectation when we come to Canada. And we should do our research well before we land. And this is what I tell everybody: when you're planning to move to Canada, your job hunt starts at least 2 months before that. You get a voice over IP number. You write your destination city. Let's say you're planning to land in Edmonton or you're planning to land in Toronto. You write Toronto, Ontario. You write that Canadian voice over IP number, and you'll get a call on your Pakistani number. And you start applying at least 2 months before. You do not start applying after landing here, getting the SIN number and all of that, and after paying the deposit on your condo, and then you start looking for a job. You're already $5,000-6,000 down. Ideally speaking, when you land, your first concern should not be which mobile SIM you need to get. Your first concern should be which I need to get my SIN number because I have to give it to my employer on Monday because my payroll is going to start. And that's the kind of landing we should have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Umair. So I think without further delay, let's get into the questions, the rest of the
Yes,
questions.
absolutely.
If you need help with me, I can help you with that. But I think you would have sequentially organized them as well. So
Yeah.
let's go through that.
Yeah, the first question was if how many pages of resume should an experienced professional have? I think we already covered that one. The second we have is if we only have local education from Pakistan, should we include that in the resume or not? You do not need to include your education at the start of the resume if you have more than 3 years of experience. Because after 3 years of experience, your biggest asset is your experience, not your education. So it automatically goes to the bottom. But let's say a lot of your target jobs require CSPO. Then you would mention CSPO with your name. So let's say Umair Ayyub, comma CSPO. You mention that at the top. So it's not about the placing of the education. Uh, Third one is how you to ensure your resume passes online job board. I think we already discussed that. Uh, the next one is keywords, placing the keywords, and where should your skill section be? Again, very important. Uh, your resume starts with your name, your location, and everything. Then you write 2 to 3 lines of summary. I'm a supply chain professional with over 15 years of experience across CPG sectors globally. That's it. Then the next section should be your skills and tools and competencies. So strategic supply chain planning, or let's say product management, product development life cycle, business requirement gathering, functional and non-functional requirements, user journey mapping, user story. Then the next thing is that uh, backlog grooming, refining, and prioritization. So all those things. So those words go right under your introduction because that section of your resume serves as your cover letter, your elevator pitch, and all of that, which the recruiter will scan in the first 6 to 8 seconds. And a Harvard Business Review's research says that a recruiter spends 6 to 8 seconds to scan a resume. If we don't make the impression, they're not gonna scroll further down. The next one
And
is
before you go to, I've been part of the hiring teams as well, and Umair is right there. I skim the resume, used to skim the resume, 7 to 10 seconds maximum.
yeah,
You like if you get the very at the top interests you, then you go through the rest of the resume. If it doesn't, you don't go through the rest.
absolutely, absolutely. That's so true. And because that's where you can make that first impression. Then the next one was what is the most proficient way of tailoring the resume for each job posting? We do not need to do that. We just discussed that one. Uh, how can I tailor my resume for job in quality assurance field? Look at 10 jobs. Look at the 10 jobs that you're targeting. Let's say you have 5 years of experience. Find 10 jobs that are asking for 5 years of experience in QA. Look what they're asking for. Capture those skills, tools, responsibilities, and competencies in your resume. That's all you need to do. As a fresh CS graduate from FAST and a Canadian PR, what are some of the tips to improve the profile and get ahead of other Canadians while starting a new career in Canada? It doesn't matter where you graduated from. If you have the right skill set and for entry level, 0 to 3 years requirement jobs, you just need to show that you have done this in your projects. That ABC that you need to show in your resume comes from the 10 target jobs that you need to do. Uh, then the next one was is that an achievement based resume the only acceptable format? How do we capture the technology used when delivering solutions while making sure the resume is not dense enough for ATS recruiter to skip the skip? Okay, interesting question. Like we discussed, your points, you have captured all the key skills, tools, and competencies in your skills and tools section, which is like in bullet points, maybe in 2 columns, so it's easier to skim through. And then the next column, the next section is your professional experience. That's where you write it very clearly, and you should bold it. Let's say you used Figma, or you used Trello, or you used Jira, or you used uh, there are some libraries as well for software developers. So bold them out in that certain line, and your bullet points ideally should be 5 to 6 for each job description, and they should be, and obviously not everybody can include numbers. So let's say if you're a software developer, you might not have numbers. If you're a web designer, you might not have numbers, or a product manager won't have numbers. So it's not important to have numbers. Not every job can. Financial people can, supply chain people, marketing people can. So you do not, but you should use power phrases. That's very important. Like spearheaded, successfully delivered, managed a team of, led this, completed, successfully completed. So that's how you should start your sentences. Your resume should scream that I am a high achiever. Your resume should not be apologetic. Assisted the manager in this. That's not how a resume should be. Then the next point is, even though we have all the required experience and have gotten our CVs and resume optimized, checked, and approved by others, we still don't get any interview calls. Again, do not listen to people that I told you about. I cannot, in the interest of time, I won't go into details, but I know I've fixed so many resumes where people said, okay, I got this checked by somebody who's working for Microsoft. And I said, okay, but it's not even relevant to the job that you're applying to. I'll give you a very quick example. Somebody from cybersecurity reached out to me. I know nothing about cybersecurity. And they said that I've customized my resume, blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting a single call. So can you look at my resume? And I looked at their resume. I said, okay, can you send me one job that you recently applied to and got rejection? And you really think that was the ideal job for you given your skill set? And they said, yeah, sure. So they sent me a job and I asked them again, are you sure this is the right job for you? And they said, yes. I said, okay, there are only 5 points in the job description. 2 of them are soft skills, 3 are the technical points. The first point was, I don't know what it means in cybersecurity world, but it was vectoring of the threats. And in their resume, I did a control F and there was not a single time it said vectoring of threats. There was no skills and tools section. It was nowhere in their experience. I said, you don't even have the first competence that they ask for. How would you get a response? So but they had captured all the soft skills, data driven, team player, collaborative, fostering the culture of teamwork. That's not what they're looking for. So those are the mistakes that we make. And then the other 2 were, yeah, so that's all the questions I had. I think we should open it for the forum to ask any questions.
I think I think before we do that, I think there were a few questions about how to manage the LinkedIn profile as well. And then, how to, like, I know this is going to become a session of its own sometime, but the how to prepare for an interview. But if you can just briefly explain that before we go to the audience for the
Sure.
rest of the questions.
So of all the candidates I've worked with, we just copy paste the resume on LinkedIn. Honestly speaking, we do not do anything else on LinkedIn. And then Indeed also has its own profile. Like you can upload your resume, but you need to make an Indeed profile as well. And I cannot even begin to tell you how many people, once they created their Indeed profile with the updated resume, they got calls left, right, and center through Indeed. I'm not even talking about LinkedIn right now. So yes, your LinkedIn should be a copy paste or an even more elaborate version of your resume. That's all you need to do for your resume for LinkedIn and Indeed. Quickly jumping to the interviews thing. Number 1 is that it's all about how you introduce yourself. So let's say when they ask you, tell me about yourself, you touch upon the 4 or 5 key requirements of the job. Thank you very much. So let's take the cybersecurity example. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm a cybersecurity professional with over 3 years of experience in cybersecurity. In my previous roles, I have successfully led vectoring of the threats. Now I picked that word right at the beginning and I throw it at them. So that's how I create relevance. Then most of the questions here are, so for technical jobs, yes, you will have a separate technical round where you will get an assignment and all that. But the other behavioral rounds, you need to answer your questions in a very clear situation, action, result format, or situation, task, action, result format, which is called the STAR format. So let's say, how do you handle conflict? Do not say, I ask people to sit on the table, have coffee, and talk about their conflicts and be open about it. That's not the answer they're looking for. We are not resolving a personal dispute. We are talking about professional settings. So you give a realistic example. So there was this time where my manager wanted me to follow this format of the code. After looking at the code, I went back to the manager, and the action I took was I wrote an alternate code and I showed that the runtime of the website or the loading time has been optimized by this much. And as a result, my manager appreciated me for that. And the conflict was resolved and we went ahead with a new code. You give a real life example. That's how you go about it. And then also make sure in your introduction, you talk about yourself. We are in Canada. We are not in some country which has common issues like roti, kapra, and makan. Tell them who you are as a person. So I have this many years of experience. I've done this, this, this. And outside of my work hours, you will probably find me watching thriller movies on Netflix or bicycle riding or hiking or camping. I have discussed motorcycles with VPs. I know people who have discussed money heist in their interviews. So talk about yourself. People love to know, and you would feel that in Canada on a Monday meeting, what do they talk about? The first 5 minutes I spent talking about the weekend. I went to my cottage up north. I went boating. I went fishing. That's what they talk about. So that's where you show the cultural fit. Rafael, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for letting me know. I think by now most of your questions that you guys have submitted have been addressed. So I think I've allowed everybody to open up their mics. So if you wanna, unmute yourself, ask any questions, you're feel free to do it, but just do it one by one. So who's the first person who wants to ask any question here? Go ahead, Binish.
Yes, so Umair, I have a question with regards to technical skills, like where in our resume should they go? Should they go at the very bottom before education or?
No, right after. So that's what I was mentioning. They go right under your professional summary, because that's the part of your 6 to 8 second elevator pitch. So your technical skills and tools go right under your professional summary, which is like a two-liner just before your name, just after your name and address and all. You write a professional summary, and then skills and tools section, all the technical skills and tools go there, maybe in one column or two column, whichever way makes it easier to read. And that's where they go. And because that's what the recruiter will glance through. Remember, the first human to land eyes on your resume is a recruiter who is not a technical person. He probably remembers 4 to 5 key skills from his job, from the job description he has read. And if he does not see them right at the beginning of the resume, he won't scroll down.
Okay, and then one more question. Should volunteer experience be included if I'm volunteering for like a few different places? Should I mention that in my resume or no?
If it's relevant, then definitely yes.
Okay,
But let's
thanks.
say if it's not relevant to your field of work, like you're a software developer, but you're volunteering at a not-for-profit, helping kids out, yes, you do not need to include that.
Okay.
Yes,
Go
Faisal,
ahead,
please.
Faisal.
Faisal, you can go ahead.
Faisal, we can't hear you.
Sorry. First of all, I'd like to thank Umair and thank you for the session. It was really insightful. And one thing that stood out for me was the fact that you need to be an early applicant. So regarding that, what is your like professional insight into the fact, given the fact that you have been doing, how do we make sure that we apply to jobs early? Like, how do we know that a job has been posted uh, as
So
soon as
interestingly,
it is posted?
yeah, very, very good question, Faisal. Thank you so much. I'll clarify that. Uh, so the way I do it is that, and the way I help my candidates that I'm actively mentoring, I send them jobs every single day. I open Indeed around 10:30, 11 a.m. and I open LinkedIn, and then I just search the jobs in the location, let's say in Ontario, and then I go by last 24 hours, posted in the last 24 hours, and then I sort them by date. So I do not want you to wait until LinkedIn or Indeed notifies you in the evening. It's already too late. It's been 8 hours. You will at least have 100 applicants already there. So if you're an active job applicant, you should apply around midday. You should do that on Indeed and LinkedIn both. Search your jobs, sort by date in the last 24 hours, and apply away.
Faisal, hopefully this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Umair. That was great.
Perfect. Okay, Utban.
You mentioned that you have people who are interviewing when they're in Pakistan. So
Yeah.
do they tell the interviewer that they're in Pakistan and they will land in Canada after 2 months or 3 months or a month? Or is that something that we don't have to tell them?
So that, yes, that definitely comes up in the discussion, and it doesn't usually come up in the initial screening or the first interview. And when they ask when can you join, they usually tell them, okay, I'm planning to land in Canada. I have my COPR. I can show you the COPR as well. And these are my tickets. I'm planning to land, let's say, 45 days from now. I've worked with people who landed a job offer 4 months before landing. I know people who have landed a job easily 45 to 60 days. Multiple people landed a job offer 45 to 60 days before landing. And employers are absolutely okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
Azim,
Azim, you're on
Az-
mute.
Azim, you're on mute if you're talking. Okay, in the interest of time, we'll move to Mazareb.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, my question is like my first company was a like startup. So I worked there like I am like less than 3 years of experience. So I worked there for 1.5 years. But
Okay.
that was shut down due to like their own economic conditions. Or so should I include that experience also in my resume or not? Because they have like no physical presence or like any scalable thing.
Uh, how many years of experience do you have after that?
After that, like I have like almost a year now. I'm working like remotely. I was working remotely
So
for a Canadian company.
then the first role was a substantial part of your total experience.
Yeah.
Then you should include it, and there is no harm in doing that. It's not that they're gonna reach out to them without asking you. So there's no harm in including that.
Okay. So I was working from Pakistan for this company.
Yeah.
But the contract was made on the basis of like I was a Pakistani citizen by that time. So
Who's
do I
gonna
have to
ask you for
include?
the contract? Who's gonna
Okay,
ask you for
perfect.
the contract?
So
Okay,
simply
so
like
this is
that
one.
is
Yeah, so this is one thing very important. Nobody's gonna ask you for your past experience letters. Please understand that.
perfect.
People believe what you're going to write. Yes, you should not, colossally lie on your resume, but 1 2 months here and there are absolutely fine. They're just going to ask you for references. You will provide references, and obviously you provide references of the people you know well and who are going to speak good about you. 9 out of 10 times they will just send them an email with a questionnaire that does not ask about tenure, does not ask about the job title, that asks about what were your strengths, what were your opportunities, what was your relationship, was your manager, was he your manager, would you hire this person again? Is there any opportunity area for this person? That's it. So do not worry about that.
And I
Thank you
think
very much.
I can agree with
Yeah.
Umair as well that you like due to privacy reasons, we cannot disclose certain aspects to an external party.
Yeah.
We are just helping them out saying, hey, yes, this person worked. So the whole intent is, yes, this person worked for this company, and yes, we manage them and
Yeah.
just provide the reference based on how they worked. They will and most of the HRs won't even ask for the information, what role you were working on, how long you were working for, and everything like that. Anyways, I think there's a question from unless Azim still has a question, there's a question in the chat from Jawad about cover letters and how important they are. Do we need to include them if the employer is asking for it? So, Umar, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cover letters are a thing of the past. You do not need cover letters. 99% of the jobs have two boxes to upload your documents. One is resume, it has a red static on it because it's mandatory. The second one is any other document or cover letter, it's not mandatory. The top section of your resume, which we spoke about, your professional summary and your skills and tools, that's your cover letter, that's your elevator pitch. Of all the candidates I've worked with, we have never written a single cover letter.
Joad, does it answer your question? Okay. Azim is typing a question, so we'll wait for that. Seems like he's not able to. Meanwhile, Azim writes the question. Okay, so he wrote the question. Does the same rule apply regarding cover letter and resume to the US rules as well? So if
Yeah.
somebody, I think I can explain this. So, Umar, some people work remotely for the US companies and some intend who got their Canadian citizenship, they're moving to US. So maybe if you can help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So fortunately, I've recently worked with 7 US professionals who are actually in US citizen or green card holders, nothing to do with Canada. And one of them was a supply chain professional, and 6 were product owners or scrum masters. And we followed the same format, never used a cover letter or anything like that. And Alhamdulillah, they all landed multiple interviews and jobs.
Okay, so we are reaching our time. Any other questions before we conclude this session. Go ahead, Fasil.
Yeah, so Umair, one last question. What do you think would be the ideal length of resume for somebody who has like 3 years of work experience in Pakistan and is looking for the first job?
3 years of experience, 1 page max.
Yeah,
If with your
and
3 years of experience you cannot explain it in 1 page, it's not a good impression.
thank you.
All right, so I'm just gonna file with your permission. I'm gonna put in my
Yep.
Calendly link. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to reach out to me to discuss their resume, again, I try to do as much as I can for the Pakistani community, especially. Yes, I do offer paid mentorship and all of that, but that is when I do the resume and everything. Otherwise, you can send me your resume. You can set up a call with me. I'm going to put the link in the chat. There is no charge for reviewing your resume and sharing with you all the tips that I have already shared. But it's the same test that we can, discuss over a 30 minutes call as well. I do not charge anything for that because, again, I do not do this as a business. I try to help the community however I can. But when I have to invest time, then I don't just go with your resume. Then I say, okay, we go the whole 9 yards. We make your resume together. We practice your mock interviews, how to negotiate salary, what to what do you need to read in the offer letter, like what is RRSP, what is vacation time accrual, and all those things that new immigrants do not know. So then I go with everything, the whole mentoring until they finish their first week on the role. But feel free to reach out if you want to discuss anything about your resume.
Perfect, and really, really appreciate that, Umair. Because, and I think just to elaborate that Umair is of like he's already provided you all the guidance that you need to craft your resumes, right? So you don't need him. But if you really want, to him to spend time with you, help you in the job search, help negotiate the salary, then he's investing his time with it. So we have to be considerate of that as well. So I think you guys have gotten his Calendly link. We'll share it in our group as well if anybody wants to get in touch with him. I saw Beanish raising the hand. Beanish, do you have any question before we drop?
Yes, so just one last question, Umair. In terms of project managers, like, should we list our projects on the resume or no? Should it just be included with our, our duties and responsibilities?
Absolutely. So, ideally speaking, your first line of any job should be an overarching summary. So, let's say spearheaded 5 different projects encompassing A, B, C, 3, D, whatever, and total projects worth this many $1 million. And if you have a much longer list of projects because you worked on smaller projects as well, you can add a separate link. We have done this in the past with multiple IT project managers, that we add a separate link where you can click to go to a separate file and see the whole list of the projects. And it's a spreadsheet. Project title, how many stakeholders, what was the scope, what was the total budget, who was the client, and all of that. So you can attach that separately to save the space on the resume. But your first line of the job should give an overview: how big were the projects, how many projects, and what was the scope of the project that you were managing.
Okay, thank you,
And
sir.
and Beanish is a similar concept as when developers put their GitHub profile. It should be the same. Jawad
Yeah.
had another question.
I think he asked about normal software developers separate section for projects, and you already answered
If
that you can
yeah.
they can give their GitHub link.
Perfect. Okay, so we are at time. So thank you, Mayor, for taking this time out. And I hope our audience learned a lot from this. And thank you everything that you do for the community as well. And we'll share the link of your Calendly if they need to book a session with you, and if subsequently they wanna seek your professional help as well in finding the job. So thank you so much, and really appreciate everybody taking our time on this weekend.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you
Umair.
so much for having me. It was a pleasure and very insightful discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.